Hey, so this is the Pastor's Post. My name is Jeff, and if you're tuning into this is the last video I'm doing on the topic of funerals. Now, I've talked about a few things in this series, this little helpful series. I hope you've found it helpful. What to do as far as an order of service, preparing the sermon, choosing the text, all that sort of thing. I think I covered all that. If not, if there's something else you'd like to know that maybe I can help you with, just leave a comment down below. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, things like that. But to this video, I just really wanted to do something kind of short and cover kind of a sensitive topic. This idea of doing a funeral for a loved one, that's hard. Some people don't like to do funerals for family. Some people only want to do funerals for family. And there's somewhere in the middle, everybody just has that awkward feeling about it. What do we say? How much can we say? How do we handle our own family in the midst of all of this? And truthfully, funerals can be very dramatic. I shared a little bit about that as far as the eulogy and things like that at a funeral I did recently. And it can be problematic at times as well. So here's the thing. Should you do the funeral for a loved one? That's up to you. You have to decide that. I don't think you should not. It's the same as I said previously in another video. You know, if you're given a chance to preach the gospel, take it. But sometimes we have a difficult person in our family, or maybe it's a person who isn't very loving in general, or very kind. You wonder about their salvation. Maybe that's your family, your uncle or your cousin that died in a car accident. And what do? Well, you can't preach them into heaven. You shouldn't do that. You should not do that. Please do not do that. Don't ever do that. Don't preach in such a way that you make a judgment about the eternity of someone else. Okay? Don't ever do that. But you knew them. They were close to you, and that's why you're having this problem. So I'm going to share this, okay? I have done funerals for family. Some who I know beyond the shadow of a doubt, that person, if they weren't saved, man, they did a great job fooling everybody, and don't know how they did such a good job. There are others who I've done a funeral for, and I don't know where they are in eternity. And even though they were a nice person, a kind person, can't say they were a saved person. And I've done a funeral for someone who was difficult, did not really live as a Christian for most of their life. And though they would have proclaimed Christ, they would have said they were a Christian by their own confession, there was very little, if any, fruit in their life to dictate otherwise. And I think the best approach to all of this is just to be honest right out of the gate. Rip that Band-Aid off. I mean, if the family wants you, don't insist on doing the funeral, okay? If you're not sure, don't insist. If somebody says, but we really want you to do the funeral, then okay, all right, you wanted me to do this, right? They wanted you, they're gonna get you. And so when you get up there to preach the funeral, the message, and the deceased was a difficult person, it's okay to be honest about that. Be careful in how you're honest about it. You don't have to be blunt. You don't have to be cruel. But saying something like, I would be dishonest if I stood up here and told you that Aunt Beulah was a loving, kind person when she wasn't those things at all. You don't add that last part. Just, it'd be dishonest to me to say Uncle Gary was always was the image of Christ himself when Uncle Gary kicked puppies and punched babies, just say that, though. So you don't have to say the last part, but just, it would be dishonest to me to say that he was this or that, or she was this or that. But be honest in the approach, and then go into your message. You might have one redeeming thing. Surely you can think of one redeeming quality this person had. Maybe they had a pet they loved, or maybe they were always kind to the neighbor kids or whatever. You can say this was an act of kindness, and maybe you can tie that into the message somehow. But just remember, you're not preaching for them, you're preaching for the family. And you want that last memory of that family member. Maybe that person was cruel their whole life. I did a funeral for a family member who had patterns of abuse in their history. Abuse that hits pretty close to home for me. And it was really hard for me to kind of come to grips with, not only am I preaching their funeral, I have to take someone who most of her closer family, or his closer family, is not going to have a good memory about this person. And I'm tasked now with the last hour that we spend focused solely talking about this person, making that a good memory, making that something joyful. And the only way to do that is to spend that hour not talking necessarily about that person, but about Christ. Maybe Grandma Margaret or Cousin Phil, maybe they weren't that nice. So, okay, you know what? It'd be dishonest to me to tell you that Cousin Phil loved Jesus. I don't know that he did. I don't know that he didn't. But let me tell you why you should. And then give him the gospel. Maybe there's some family who insists that because this person said the sinner's prayer at 9 years old, even though they've been, a gangbanger and knocked over several liquor stores in their life, and they've been in and out of prison since they were a teenager, and now they're in their mid-30s and they died of a drug overdose after having beat up their girlfriend. Okay? If that's the case, it's okay to say, you know what? I don't know where they are in eternity. I don't know that he ever had a genuine relationship with Christ. I know he prayed this prayer, so there's a seed that was there, and whatever went through his mind in those last moments, I'm not his judge for eternity. But let me tell you about the one who is, and then turn it about Christ. Turn it around to be about Christ. And you may not make everybody happy with your funeral sermon. That's something you're going to have to accept. But you want that last message to be one that is full of Christ, full of the gospel, and something that, even though it may not be something the most positive, it's something that they can look back and say, well, you know what? At least they talked about Christ. I think that's what the dead would want. I think if the dead were able to truly speak to the living, they would all say, hey, you need Christ. So with that said, I hope that gives you some nuggets to work with. If you are struggling with, should I do the funeral of a loved one, and you have a way out of it and you don't know if you should, don't do it. If you know somebody who's passed away and they're close to you, maybe they're not family, but they were a friend, and the family says, hey, we really want you to do this. Jim Bob, when he passed away, when he was sick, he was saying he wanted you to preach this funeral. Respect that. They valued you, and so they value the message that you preach. So take that message, that gospel message that you are known for preaching, into the pulpit one more time for that person and give them the truth of Jesus. From that, I'm just going to end this little series on preaching funerals. Maybe I'll do another one years from now. I don't know. Hopefully, if you found it helpful, if you found it encouraging, if you've gotten a nugget of wisdom or whatever out of this, that's awesome. Praise God. Give me a like, subscribe, make sure you share it, all that stuff. In the meantime, God bless you guys. I'll see you in the next one.